We're going to focus today on the sum product formula. It's a ridiculously powerful formula. And we'll start simple and then we'll make this more difficult as we go, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at our country, and then we're going to have a look at our department, and then we're going to sum up the value. Now look, to be fair, this is the formula which you would use for sum ifs, but I'll show you how sum ifs would fail as the formulas get a bit more complex, okay? But this will explain how the formulation works. So we'll use the USA as the criteria and sports as the criteria, and I've made them in different colors. So in cell G2, what we'll do is we'll start the formula off and I'll talk us through the syntax, all right? So it equals sum product. And then we start with the second bracket. Now this second bracket is for the criteria that we're going to put inside the part of the sum product. So our criteria are our range from A2 to A9, and this is quite intuitive. That's our range where our range is equal to a value. So it reads really well where the range between A2 and A9 is equal to cell E2. And I'll leave the formulas hanging the way they are, so I close my bracket. Now that's the first part of the equation. If you remember the product from primary school, the product was the multiplication of numbers. So we use the multiplication symbol to join this equation's first and second elements, okay? So we open another bracket, and then we go to the corresponding column ranging from B2 to B9. Now these ranges need to be symmetrical. So you can see that I've got them exactly the same length, and where that range is equal to them in terms sports. So click on cell F2. Yes. Once you've got all that criteria in, we close our bracket, type the multiplication symbol, and then we open a final bracket. And then what we want to do is we want to make this sum range identical to the previous two ranges here. Okay, let's highlight the range from C2 to C9. So we close our bracket for the sum range, and then we close our bracket for the sum product. And it should give us a sum total between 62 and 93. All right, so we press enter, and boom. The summation of those two is 155, so we get that appearing at the bottom. And that's effectively just going to be 1010. So basically hits the USA in the first instance. And I'll just make that column D a little bit larger to show you what it's actually doing. Let's insert two blank columns also. Cursor inside D2, and it's saying USA 1. And it goes to Canada, and it goes to 0. And then it goes 0 because Mexico is not the USA. And then it says 1, and then the rest of the zeros, okay? And then that's for equation 1, so I'll type EQ1 here in cell D1. And then this cell E1 is equation 2. It's multiplying out the ones and zeros. So for the first instance, it goes sports 1. And then 0 because clothing does not equal sports. And then 0, and then 1, and then 0, 0, etc. And if this cell B9 said sports, for example, it would say 1. Then in the next column, column F, what's it doing? It's saying equals 1 multiplied by 1 multiplied by the value. Okay? And then there's an intuitive additional sign after that. So let's copy this cell down. So it's basically taking the array of those ranges and adding them together. That's what's happening inside of the formula in detail. Now, how cool is that? You don't get assistance when I click on the FX button. So that's our basic sum product formula. Let's put it into different contexts, just a bit more complex. Move on to the example 2 worksheet. So basically what we want to do is look up USA Sports in quarter 2. We're not looking at one column now. We're looking at many columns. This is where SUMIF struggles a little bit because it looks at one column with a set of criteria. It looks like it's only looking at one column at a time unless you're just nested. And that's the way SUMIFs was designed. SUMPRODUCT is designed a little bit more dynamically. It's a bit heavier than SUMIFs, but it is a bit more flexible. Use a little bit more weight, but it's fantastic. Okay, so this is where it really comes into its own. We want to create a formula that looks like this column, column A, and this column, column B. And then these 4 columns of the criteria across there. And then the sum range through there from C2 to F9, all right? So effectively, we'll add our 3 criteria. And let's type equals sum product, open with another bracket for the criteria, and then we'll use our range down there from A2 to A9. And then we'll say where that is equal to the term USA in cell I2. I will leave the formula hanging because it's just a one-time only formula. We close our bracket and we type a multiplication symbol that joins the sum product criteria. Open another bracket. Okay. Now we go into this department's criteria from B2 to B9. And then we make sure it's the same length. I might give you an example where the length does not match after this. All right. So we say, well, that is equal to rather intuitively sports, cell J2. All right, so we close our bracket, multiplication sign, and then we open another bracket. You can see that they're just a set of ranges with criteria inside brackets. And now this is where it gets interesting. This is where sum product works across formulas. So let's highlight all of these columns from C1 to F1. So the criteria are from column C1 to F1 where it's equal to K2. So we're clicking to quarter 2. Now that's all the criteria we need. Close parenthesis. Again, multiplication sign and open a bracket. What we've got to do is we've got to make sure that the range that we're calculating goes symmetrical with the data across here. We make sure that it's exactly the same width. From C2 to F9, it's the same width, same length. It needs to be symmetrical. And I close 2 brackets. Nice. Nice. Now what we want to do is the summation of 65 and 82. So cross your fingers and press enter. Boom. We get the summation of these 2 numbers. The result is 147 and it popped in there. If I was able to copy the cells A5 to B5, for example, and paste them into cell A3, this group number grows. We pull the 81 in there as well. Or if I change the quarter in cell K2 and Q4, it will give us a different result. The numbers 109, 86, and 67, and the summation is 262. All right, let me show you how to break it. So there's 2 sorts of ways that formula will break. The sum product formula breaks if the range loses its symmetry. So if we take the cursor at the corner of cell G9 and take it to that, now we press enter and we get an error. Now slash means that a range is not symmetrical here. So there needs to be symmetry. It needs symmetry. Let's click on example 3 worksheet. And let's look at the equation where we add some operators inside of our formula. Basically what we want to do is we want to look at the data to consolidate across columns. And this is where the real power of the formula comes into play. So we're going to take a look at the USA and then sports and then everything up until January 2022, all right? We'll start with our equals sum product and open a second bracket. And then we do the same thing. We want our range to be A2 to A9 where it's equal to USA, which is cell I2. Close our bracket. Let's type a multiplication sign and open a left parenthesis. We move on to the second column. Highlight cells from B2 to B9, where it's equal to sports cell J2. Close our bracket, multiplication symbol, and open a bracket. And then we want the data across the top in the same way. Cells from C1 to F1. But now we don't want it equal to, we want it where it's less than or equal to. And now we point to January 2022. Cursor inside cell K2, close parenthesis, there are 3 criteria. So it should give us a summation of these cells there and these cells there. Nice. Press the multiplication sign and open a final bracket. Look for that symmetry. We need symmetry. So let's highlight cells from C2 to F9 and then we close our bracket twice. Alright, so it should give us the 4 cells there and the 4 cells there. We press enter and the result is 141. So it's basically summing the 74 and the 67. Let's change the January to April. And what we get is the result 613. It gives us the capacity to move forwards and backwards and gives us a year-to-date position that meets these criteria. So I hope that makes a lot more sense. That's the sum product formula. You can do a lot more than what I've showed you. This is just a basic introduction into what you can actually do. Alright, have a great day everybody.